Hello, sweetheart. It's Rose, and I need to tell you something that still makes my hands tremble when I think about it. I was standing at the back of the church just minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start, smoothing the lace on my blouse with hands that would not stop shaking when I heard her voice. Not whispered, not cautious, not behind closed doors. No, clear as a bell, slicing through the hushed reverence of the bridal room. Why did you invite her? She said. I told you not to invite her. Her. Me. The mother of the groom. My breath caught, and for a moment I felt the world tilt under my feet. There was a pause, a shifting of fabric, a soft clink of jewelry, and then her voice again, sharper this time. I'm serious, Tyler. I don't want her here. She makes everything weird. Weird. I hadn't even stepped into the room yet. I stood frozen in the corridor, back pressed against the cool stone wall, and I felt that old, familiar heat rising in my cheeks. Shame, confusion, and something colder underneath it all. Anger, not hot and explosive. No, the kind of anger that sits low in the gut like lead. Quiet and dangerous. Tyler's voice followed, quieter, trying to placate her. She's my mother, Jenna. And she's barely in your life, and now she shows up playing the part of doting mom? I told you I wanted this day to feel clean, no baggage. Clean. I didn't know how long I stood there before I turned around and marched down the hallway and straight out into the crisp October air. I didn't wait for anyone. I didn't sit in the pews. I didn't watch my son get married. I didn't cry. Not then. I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, and listened to the distant echo of bells ringing. Not for me. Not today. I sat in that church parking lot for nearly an hour after the bells stopped ringing, long after the last guest had shuffled inside and the heavy oak doors had swung shut. I remember the sound of the breeze rattling dry leaves across the asphalt, the way my own reflection stared back at me from the windshield. Older, yes, but also diminished. Like a shadow of the woman I used to be. I'd put on my best blouse that morning, ironed slacks, a soft pink lipstick that Nora, my granddaughter, had helped me pick out just last week. I'd even curled my hair the way Tyler liked when he was a boy, because this was supposed to be a proud day. My boy getting married, a new chapter, a moment I'd quietly hoped might bring us closer again. But instead, I'd been spoken of like a stain, and he'd said nothing. It wasn't a complete surprise. Not really. The distance had crept in years ago. After his father died, something shifted in Tyler. Not all at once, but gradually, like fog settling over a valley. He moved to the city, got promoted, started dating Jenna. She was sharp, always polished, always had a glass of something expensive in her hand. The first time we met, she called me Miss Rose instead of Mrs. Whitman, like I was the help. I remember offering her pie, homemade, still warm. She smiled, that tight-lipped smile of hers, and said, I'm gluten-free, but that's adorable. Adorable. After that, she sent gift cards at Christmas. No notes, no phone calls. Never came for dinner again. But Tyler, he still called. Sometimes. Short calls, quick updates. We're good, Mom. Work's busy. Can't talk long. And when I'd ask if they'd be visiting soon, he'd always say, we'll try. They never did. I blamed myself at first. I always have, haven't I? I wondered if I'd asked too many questions. Maybe I was too needy, too eager. Maybe I reminded him of a life he was trying to outgrow. But I never thought he'd be ashamed of me. I never thought he'd let someone else treat me like a stranger at my own son's wedding. Eventually, I started the car. The sound of the engine startled me. I drove to the diner on the edge of town. Not because I was hungry. I just couldn't go home yet. Not to the silence. Not to the framed pictures that would stare at me from the mantel. Me holding baby Tyler, both of us grinning, wrapped in a blanket his grandma crocheted. I sat at the counter and ordered a cup of coffee. The waitress, a girl with chipped nail polish and a kind face, asked if I was waiting on someone. I said no. And then I did something I haven't done in years. I cried in public. Just a few tears, silent and stubborn. I wiped them away quickly, but not quick enough. The girl slid a napkin across the counter. You okay, ma'am? I nodded. Lied. But the truth pressed hard against my ribs. I was not okay, because it wasn't just the wedding. It was everything that had come before, and everything that suddenly made sense. The missed birthdays, the delayed replies, the careful distance. The bride didn't want me there, and my son didn't fight for me. I stirred cream into my coffee, watched the swirl fade, and I thought, what else has he stayed silent about? Because silence, it doesn't just hurt, it erases. It was 3 weeks after the wedding when I found the envelope in my mailbox. Thick ivory paper with embossed initials and a wax seal that tried too hard to be tasteful. It looked expensive, self-important, just like Jenna. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting immediately. All clean loops and clinical curves. I turned it over in my hands for a full minute before taking it inside. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the kitchen counter next to the basket where I keep bills and old birthday cards. I made a cup of tea, swept the porch, fed the neighbor's cat who thinks he lives here now. Anything to delay the inevitable. When I finally opened it, my hands shook. There was no letter, no apology, no explanation, just an invitation. Join us for an intimate post-wedding brunch to celebrate our new chapter with close friends and family. Sunday, noon, their new home. Dress, smart casual. Please RSVP by text. I read it twice, 3 times. Then I stared at the words close friends and family. Family. After being spoken about like I was a problem. After being left outside like I was baggage. Now they wanted me to come and smile for the photo album. I thought about throwing it out, but something kept me from it. I texted one word. Attending. I wore a navy dress with pearl earrings, polished my shoes, clipped my hair back. Not for them, for me. Because if I was going to walk into whatever this was, I was going to do it with my spine straight and my head high. Their new house was in the Heights, rows of manicured lawns and smart little hedges. It looked like the kind of place where no one cried in public. I walked up the path and rang the bell. It was Jenna who opened the door. She blinked like she hadn't expected me to actually come. "Oh," she said, "you made it." She stepped aside like she was avoiding something unpleasant on the sidewalk. I caught a whiff of her perfume. Sharp, expensive, and cold. Inside, the place was pristine. White marble countertops, chrome appliances. Everything arranged like a catalog, but something was off. The air felt strained, and not just because of me. There were maybe a dozen people there. Friends, coworkers, a few distant cousins I barely recognized, but Tyler, he wasn't in the room. Jenna led me to a mimosa bar like nothing had ever happened. "We're so glad you could make it," she said in that brittle way people do when they mean the opposite. I nodded, said nothing. 10 minutes later, I found Tyler on the back patio, alone. He was staring into the distance, a half-full glass of something amber in his hand. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly. He turned, startled. His face fell a little. "Mom, I didn't know you were coming." "Your wife invited me," I said, watching his expression. Or perhaps it was her assistant. Hard to tell. He didn't laugh, just looked tired. Older than 33. "I'm sorry about the wedding," he mumbled. And for a second, I almost let it go. Almost let the air carry that weak apology into the sky and leave it there. But I didn't. Not this time. "Sorry for what, Tyler?" I asked. He looked down. "I didn't know she'd say that. I didn't know you heard." "You didn't need to know. You heard her say it long before she spoke the words out loud." He flinched. I kept going. "You knew how she felt about me, and you married her anyway. That was your choice. But letting her treat me like I didn't belong, that was something else. She gets nervous about image," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Her family is different. I'm not a smudge on a glass to be polished away." "I know." "Do you?" I asked. "Because that day, I waited. I waited for you to find me in the hallway. I waited for you to defend me. I waited for something, anything, that said you remembered who I was before she labeled me as baggage." He didn't respond, just stood there, silent, like he always had when the stakes were real. And then, quietly, without warning, he said, "There's something I need to tell you." Something shifted in the air. His voice wasn't defensive. It wasn't tired. It was scared. I didn't know how to bring it up, he said. Not after the wedding. He walked over to a bench and gestured for me to sit. I did, cautiously. Then he pulled a thin manila folder from under the seat cushion and handed it to me. Inside were papers, letters, dates, and one word kept repeating in the margins, scrawled in Jenna's neat little loops. Inheritance. My hands froze. Mom, he said, his voice cracking. There's more going on than you think. I sat on their pristine patio bench, manila folder in my lap, the autumn sunlight pooling at my feet. The air felt colder now, despite the sun. I flipped through the pages slowly, each one peeling back a truth I had not been prepared to see. Bank records, legal documents, an email chain, and a will. My late husband's will. I'd seen the official copy years ago. We'd gone over it together, sitting at the kitchen table with a pot of tea and a highlighter. Everything was simple. If he passed first, the estate came to me. If I passed first, it went to Tyler. But the papers in my lap told a different story. The version in Jenna's possession was revised, updated less than a year before the wedding. And suddenly the name Rose Whitman was no longer the primary beneficiary. Instead, it was a trust managed jointly by Tyler and Jenna. Tyler, I whispered, my mouth dry. What is this? He rubbed his temples. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you rewrote your father's will without telling me. I didn't. Jenna, she found a loophole. The original will hadn't been properly notarized, not according to her uncle, the estate lawyer. She said it could be contested, and we needed something airtight. It was just to protect the assets. Protect them from me? My voice cracked. Did you think I'd take your money and run? No, God, no. Mom, Jenna was scared you'd mismanage it or that someone could manipulate you. She said you're too trusting. Too trusting. I nearly laughed. After what I just read, the irony could have split the sky in two. She pushed this, didn't she? I said, rising to my feet, clutching the folder like a shield. She got her claws into your father's legacy and redrew the lines so I'd be on the outside. Tyler didn't deny it. She said you wouldn't understand, he said quietly, that it was better to just let it happen quietly. So that's why she didn't want me at the wedding. I could feel it now, how everything fit into place. Why Jenna had kept her distance. Why she smiled through gritted teeth. Why she looked at me not like a threat, but like a loose thread she needed to snip. I was inconvenient. Because I still existed. Tyler stood too. I didn't mean for it to be like this. But it is like this. I stared at him hard. This boy I raised. The one I read bedtime stories to. The one I'd held through the night when he got that awful fever at 4 years old. The boy who used to beg me for one more story, just one more. Now a man who handed his mother's inheritance to a woman who called her baggage. You let her erase me, I said, voice steady, even as my throat burned. You handed her the pen. He looked like he wanted to crumble, but I didn't let him. I came to your wedding, Tyler, I said, taking a slow step forward. I stood outside that door while your bride told you I didn't belong. And now I see that wasn't a slip. That wasn't nerves. That was a woman who knew she'd already won. He opened his mouth to protest. I raised a hand. No, don't you dare. I gave up everything for this family, for you. I stitched your world together when your father died. And you couldn't even hold space for me in a room full of people who never knew his name. I took a breath, stepped back. I won't beg to be seen, Tyler, not by her, not by you. The patio doors opened behind us. Jenna stood there, glass of champagne in one hand, her phone in the other. You've been out here for a while, she said sweetly. Should I start the slideshow without you? Tyler looked at her, then at me. And then he said the only true thing I'd heard from him all day. Give us a minute, Jenna. The smile fell right off her face. I'll wait inside, she said coolly. When she left, Tyler turned back to me. His voice was softer now, broken. She scares me, Mom. That stopped me. I blinked. What? I don't even recognize myself anymore, he said, looking down at his hands. I thought I was doing the right thing, making smart decisions, keeping the peace. And what did it cost? I asked. He looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. You. I stared at him, wanting to believe that mattered, wanting to believe the little boy I'd raised was still in there somewhere, clawing his way to the surface. Then fix it, I said. I don't know how. I do. And then I held out the folder. We met at the lawyer's office the following Thursday. Not Jenna, of course, she refused to come. Said she had no interest in playing victim to a grieving matriarch. I would have laughed if it hadn't made my blood run cold. Tyler came alone. He looked thinner, paler, like someone who'd been living on borrowed confidence. But when he walked through that door, folder in hand, there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Resolve. Mr. Harmon, our estate attorney from years back, looked just as startled to see me as I was to be there. He glanced at Tyler, then at me. Wasn't aware you'd be joining us today, Mrs. Whitman. Neither was I said. But I think I've been absent long enough. Tyler sat beside me, cleared his throat. We're here to revise the trust. Mr. Harmon blinked. Excuse me. Tyler slid the copy of the will across the polished mahogany desk. This version was drawn up under advisement from Jenna's uncle. I want to revoke it and revert back to the original structure. Harmon scanned the documents, his brows rising inch by inch. And your wife is aware? She knows, Tyler said. She doesn't approve. And you? He looked at me, then he said, I'm done letting approval come before what's right. I didn't exhale until the words were written down. The room was silent as Harmon began the paperwork. The scratch of his pen against the forms was the only sound for minutes. Tyler didn't speak. Neither did I, but something passed between us, like air returning to a room that had been sealed too long. When we left, the sunlight hit my face like a spotlight. It felt warm again. Honest. I didn't look at Tyler until we reached the parking lot. She's not going to let this go quietly, I said. No, he agreed. She won't. And she didn't. That evening, around 7, the call came. My landline, of all things. I answered. I shouldn't have, but I did. Rose, Jenna said, cool as cut glass. What a surprise. I thought you'd be resting after your big performance today. I said nothing. You've made quite the mess, she continued. You've turned my husband into a guilt-soaked little boy, dragged him back into a past that never did him any good. For what? A few dollars? Some dignity? Not dignity, I said, my voice calm. That was stolen long ago. She laughed, one of those brittle, humorless laughs women like her perfect. She said, I tried. I really did. I tried to make space for you, but you kept showing up like some ghost of who Tyler used to be. Your dusty casseroles, your handwritten cards, it was all so needy. I was never asking for your permission to exist. No, she snapped. But you expected love from him, from me, and I won't apologize for protecting my life from people who drain it. I stood at the kitchen window watching a sparrow hopping along the fence. So small, so alive. I felt a strange calm come over me. You don't have to apologize, Jenna, I said, because you're not coming back into mine. You think you've won something, she hissed. You think this gives you power? No, I said, voice firm. It gives me peace. I hung up. Tyler called an hour later. She's packing a bag, he said. Said she needs time. And I asked the question I'd held back for far too long. Are you afraid of her, Tyler? There was a silence so long I thought he'd hung up. But then, I don't know. I used to think she was the strong one, the one who made everything happen. And now, I'm not sure she ever saw me at all. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. Then maybe it's time someone did. He came the next morning, alone. No suitcase, no drama, just him. My son, standing on my porch like a boy again. Do you remember, he said, When I broke my arm skating down the old hill on Orchard Lane? I smiled. Of course I do. You cried the whole way to the hospital. No, he said softly. You did. And then, just like that, he started crying. Not the silent tears of guilt or apology, but something deeper, older, a mourning. He sat at my kitchen table while I made tea the way I used to. He told me things I'd suspected but never dared to confirm. The control, the subtle jabs, the way Jenna questioned every phone call, every visit, every flicker of affection that didn't center her. She wanted me to cut the past clean, he said. She thought love was a ladder, not a root. She never understood that I'm still your son. I took his hand across the table. You always were, even when I didn't recognize the man standing in your shoes. I want to fix it, he whispered. Then start by coming home. Not to this house, but to the truth. He nodded, and then, almost shyly, he reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. It was a photo. Me holding newborn Tyler in the hospital. My face full of exhausted joy. I found this in one of her boxes, he said. She'd buried it in a drawer. I picked it up, held it to the light. I remember that moment, I said. He cried for hours. And when you finally stopped, the nurse said you were only quiet when you heard my voice. He smiled through tears. I need that voice again. Well, I said, reaching across the table. You've got it now. 2 months passed. Quietly, deliberately. Jenna moved out of the city house. Tyler didn't fight her. She left behind her espresso machine, her curated book collection of novels she'd never read, and 3 framed wedding photos that I found stacked near the recycling bin. Tyler stayed, not here with me, but near. We found a rhythm, slow but steady. He came for Sunday dinners, brought wine sometimes, and once, nervously, a pie he'd baked himself. I didn't know if it was supposed to sink in the middle, he'd said, cheeks red, waiting for my judgment. It had, but I ate it anyway, because some things you just do for love. The trust was rewritten. The estate divided the way it always should have been. Open, honest, simple. No hidden clauses, no clever traps. My name was on the house again, not for power, not even for pride, just for truth. He never went back to Jenna. I asked him once, gently, if he missed her. He paused a long time before answering. I miss the idea of her, he said. The version I built in my head, not the woman she became when no one was watching. I knew that grief, the kind that doesn't come from losing someone, but from realizing you never truly had them. One evening, early spring, we sat on the porch sipping coffee. The air smelled like wet earth and jasmine. He watched the sky while I crocheted a blanket I'd been working on since December, and after a long silence, he said, I let her shrink you. The words caught me off guard. I let her make you small in my mind, he continued, because it made it easier to keep her close. I put down my yarn. That was a choice, I said softly. And it hurt. But you've made other choices since. He nodded. Do you think I can ever fix it? I looked at him. My son. Not the version molded by image or expectation, but the one I used to read books to in bed. The one who used to grip my pinky finger like it was the whole world. You don't fix broken love with gestures, Tyler. You fix it with presence. And time? I smiled. Time doesn't heal anything. What we do with it does. He didn't speak again for a while, just sat with me, listening to the crickets, the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. And then quietly, do you want to come to the gallery next week? My friend's showing a series on mothers. I looked at him, really looked. Will you be proud to have me there? I asked. He met my eyes. I'd be honored. I went. I wore my navy blouse and the pearls he gave me on my 60th birthday. And when he introduced me, this is my mother, Rose. I didn't flinch. I didn't wonder if I belonged. I knew. Later that night, as I folded the shawl over the back of my chair and turned off the porch light, I paused by the mirror. I studied the woman there. Silver hair, laugh lines, a steadiness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. I wasn't the same woman who stood outside that wedding door holding her breath like she was trying not to crack. I had cracked, but I'd also mended, with threads stronger than silence, with words that finally found air, with the truth. We talk so often about moving on, but I've learned some wounds don't need forgetting. They need witnessing. They need a name. Mine was, I wanted to be seen, and I finally was. To anyone reading this who has been pushed aside by family, by lovers, by those too caught up in their own reflections to see your light, I want to say this. You are not baggage. You are not a mistake they politely tolerate. You are not too much, and you are not too late. We don't age out of dignity. We don't expire when someone younger walks in. We carry stories, and sometimes those stories are heavy. But my God, how beautiful it is when we finally put them down and say, this is who I am, and I will not be erased. So, no, I didn't watch my son say his vows, but I watched him come home to the truth. And that, in the end, was the vow that mattered most.